I'm sure you're aware that there are many comedians and comedians in our business, but it's only a few that stand out and become great, you know, really and truly great. Now, this next young lady, I must tell you, does everything fantastic. I mean, she's just unbelievable. As a matter of fact, she sings, she acts, and when it comes to comedy, I must tell you, she's really the boss. Ladies and gentlemen, if you please, I'd like for you to meet my dear friend, bless her sweet soul, Miss Carol Burnett. Beautiful. Thank you. Oh, Carol. You can tell they love you, just like I do. They just love you to death. I would like to tell the people, you know, Carol, sooner or later, is going to become my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and before you all get too excited about it, I want her to really explain this to you. She can tell you all how this came about, yes, so you know what's going on.
Well, I have 3 daughters. They're 9, 6, and 4. And the middle one is very shy. You know, when they're all the same sex, there is a problem with the middle one because the older one kind of runs, you know, rules the roost, and the younger one is the baby, and she kind of gets her way, you know. And the middle one is a little difficult and very shy. I think that's the way with most of them. So you really have to pay a lot of attention to them. And she's now kind of coming out of her shell, but about 2 years ago, when she was 4, her name is Jodie, she very seldom would talk to people easily at all, you know, and I would say, this is my daughter Jodie, and she'd put her fingers in her mouth and wouldn't talk, you know, and people thought something was wrong with her. And so one morning, I told Ray this, I went down into the kitchen, and she was alone having breakfast, and a plumber was there working at the sink. Well, then she was talking, because nobody was around her to say talk, right? And so she was talking to him, and I just kind of stayed in the doorway. She didn't know I was there. And he said, "What's your name?" She said, "I'm Jodie, and I'm 4 years old." And he said, "Oh." And she said, "My mother is Juliet Prowse." And she says, "And I'm married to Ray Charles."
Oh. Is that sweet?
It broke me up. So that night at dinner, I started talking to her about it, and I said, "Are you really married to Ray Charles?" She says, "Yes. Yes, I am. We have 5 children." And she says, "And we have a show on television." And I said, "Well, I haven't seen it." And I said, "What's it called?" She said, "The Jodie and Ray Charles Show." And I said, "Well, can I be on it?" And she said, "No, you have to be musical."
Isn't that sweet?
Oh, but then, though, so she had this fantasy going on for, about 6, 7 months. And so Ray was asked to be a guest on our show. We've been trying to get you for ages, and finally Ray was on the show. So about a week ahead of time, I said to Jodie, "Guess who's going to be on Mommy's show next week?" She said, "Who?" And I said, "Your husband." And there was, like, you know, a pause right between the vegetables, and she gulped, and she said, "Oh yeah, he mentioned it." You know. So now I know, you know, she's caught, and I said, "Well, you're going to come and see the show taped." And usually my kids come on dress rehearsal, which is at 4:30 on Fridays. So she said, "Well, yes." And I said, "Fine." So she came to the show, and of course, she'd never met Ray, had never seen him in person. She fell in love with you. I think it was on an Ed Sullivan show. Mm-hmm. Got fascinated. And so they came back to the dressing room, and I said, "Well, why don't you go say hello to Ray?" Now she got nervous. You know, she didn't want to meet him. She was so frightened. And so the little one, who I think is going to rule the world someday, said, "Well, I'll say hello." And she walked right in and said, "Hi, Ray." And by then, she was 2.5 or 3. So finally, Jodie went in, and she took Ray's hand, and she said, "Hello." And Ray picked her up, and she threw her arms around him, and he said, "Hello, baby, I love you." And the tears started coming down her face. I've never seen anything like it. And she was shaking. She was so excited. And she was crying. And I don't know if you remember this or not.
Oh, sure, darling. I
And
remember it
finally
all.
she ran back in my dressing room and threw herself on the couch. She says, "He loves me! He loves me!"
Yeah, man. Isn't that sweet? You know.
So I told her tonight, I said, I'm going to go see Ray. She says, "Oh, say hi."
All right, bless you. That's sweet, honey.
Yeah.
You be sure to pass it back to her.
will.
I still love her.
So when are you moving in?
Yeah. I'm on my way, dog. I tell you, I really wish, ladies and gentlemen, that there was some way. You see, this beautiful lady here, I mean, from inside out, you know, she's just pure. You know, I think if there was ever going to be anybody that you would want to be like, you know, I mean, where you could really say, let your light shine, you know, where the world can see it, would be this young lady.
Oh, God, Ray, coming from you, that
I just wanted to say thank you for coming by and talking with me to really...
How am I going to turn down my son-in-law?
Exactly. Bless you. Thank you, Mom. Thank you very much. Bless your heart. Thank you so much. That's sweet enough. Bless you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's Carol Burnett.